Welcome back to the channel, where the line between reality and nightmare gets thinner with every story. Tonight, we're diving into 5 true Tinder horror stories. Real encounters, real people, and real terror. Not ghosting, not bad dates. We're talking vanishing profiles, untraceable strangers, and obsessions that turn deadly. These aren't just stories. They're warnings. And the next time you swipe right, you might not come back. Backhand index pointing right, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and dim the lights. You're watching Swiped into Darkness. Disturbing real Tinder horror stories. Let's begin. Emily was the kind of woman who had grown tired of waiting. Not for love exactly, but for something real. After months of enduring dry conversations, breadcrumbing, and matches who ghosted after 2 lines, she had come to expect little. A date that wasn't disappointing was considered a win. It was a Thursday night when she saw his profile. Nathan, 29. Love old books, Polaroid cameras, and horror movies from the 70s. Swipe right if you like cemeteries and red wine. She stared at it longer than usual. Not because he was absurdly attractive, though he was good-looking in a rough-around-the-edges kind of way, but because the profile felt curated, real, like someone who had actually thought about what to write.
No gym selfies. No Snapchat filters.
Just 3 moody, slightly blurry photos. One of him in front of a bookstore, one silhouetted at a bonfire, and one holding a cat in an old kitchen. Emily smirked and swiped right. It was an instant match. They messaged late into the night. He wasn't like the others. His replies weren't short or suggestive or hollow. He asked her thoughtful questions, remembered the details of her responses, even offered up obscure horror films she had never heard of. "You ever seen Let's Scare Jessica to Death?" he wrote.
No.
"Is that real?" she replied, laughing. 1971. Low budget and eerie as hell. "I think you'd like it." They talked about everything: vintage cameras, abandoned buildings, favorite horror directors, childhood fears. By 2 a.m., she felt like she'd known him for months. At 2:03 a.m., he sent, "Want to meet tomorrow? I don't usually do this so fast, but I feel like we'd get along better in person." She hesitated. This wasn't her usual move. But something about Nathan made her want to break her own rules. He didn't feel like a stranger. He felt old world.
Familiar.
Maybe even safe. "Sure," she typed. "Coffee or cemetery?" "Why not both?" he replied. They met at an outdoor cafe 2 blocks from the historic part of town. It was the kind of place where the street lamps had gaslight-style bulbs and the sidewalks were crooked from decades of uneven repair. When he arrived, Emily felt a flutter of nerves. He looked just like his photos. Same sharp jaw, unruly hair, worn leather jacket. But his presence was somehow more intense in person. He smiled when he saw her, held out a hand instead of going in for a hug. Polite, slightly old-fashioned. "You're real," she said, laughing nervously. He grinned. "So are you." They got their drinks and walked the cobblestone streets, eventually making their way to the edge of the old cemetery. He didn't suggest going in, not yet. Just talked about the town's ghost stories and architecture and really listened when she told stories about growing up nearby. He even knew the name of the bookstore her mother used to manage. "How do you know that?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "I'm a good listener," he said. "You mentioned it last night." Except, she was almost sure she hadn't. They said goodbye near her car. He didn't ask to come home with her, didn't lean in for a kiss. Just touched her hand lightly and said he hoped to see her again. Then he walked off into the dusk with a calm, unhurried pace, like he wasn't worried about the future at all. Emily drove home smiling, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. It wasn't until later that night, when she tried to show her roommate his profile, that she noticed it was gone. She opened Tinder, searched her matches.
No Nathan.
She scrolled, refreshed, restarted the app. Nothing. What the hell? She whispered. It wasn't just that the chat history had disappeared. His entire profile was gone, as if it had never existed. No photos, no messages, no match. Maybe he unmatched you? Her roommate suggested. No way, Emily replied. We had a great time. Then maybe he deleted his account? That explanation made more sense. But also didn't. Why would someone delete their account immediately after a successful date? She tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just private, or cautious, or didn't want to be distracted. That wasn't creepy, right? That night, Emily dreamt of stone steps leading underground. The sky in the dream was bruised purple, and the sun didn't move. She was walking barefoot through a cemetery, following someone's silhouette. She never saw the figure's face, just the back of a long, dark coat, and the sound of something scraping behind her, like fingernails on brick. She woke up at 3:13 a.m., cold, alone. The room smelled like old soil. She stared at the ceiling until morning. The next few days passed with radio silence. No messages, no calls. She had given Nathan her number, but he hadn't used it. She didn't want to seem clingy, so she didn't text either. By Monday, the strange feelings had begun. She'd come home to things moved slightly. Pillows on the wrong couch, closet door ajar. Once, the bathroom mirror had a faint smudge across it. Not like a handprint, but like someone had breathed on it. The worst was Tuesday night. She came home to find a single Polaroid photo resting against her front door.
No envelope.
No note. Just a picture of her sitting at the cafe from their date, taken from a distance. She stared at it, heart hammering. She hadn't seen anyone taking pictures that day. She hadn't noticed a camera. And more importantly, Nathan never mentioned owning a Polaroid. Emily stood frozen in front of her apartment door, the Polaroid pinched between trembling fingers. She looked up and down the hallway. No movement, no sound. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights flickering above. The picture wasn't just eerie, it was impossible. She was sitting alone at the cafe table, cup in hand, gazing off in a direction that suggested she didn't know anyone was watching. The angle was slightly above, almost from across the street, as if whoever had taken it was up on a fire escape or leaning from a window. Her first thought was to call Nathan, but she didn't have his number, and his profile was still gone. Her second thought was to call the police. But what would she even report? A photo? A feeling? Instead, she did what most people do when fear bumps against denial. She rationalized it away. Maybe it was some weird friend of his playing a joke. Maybe he had an old camera after all. Maybe this was just his quirky, offbeat idea of flirting. But in the pit of her stomach, she didn't believe any of that. She locked her door, bolted it, shoved a chair under the handle. Then she didn't sleep. The next morning, she did what she should have done days ago. She went online and searched for him. Not on Tinder. She already knew he was gone from there. She searched his name, Nathan plus her city. Nothing.
No Facebook.
No LinkedIn.
No Instagram.
She tried reverse image searching his Tinder photos, one of which she had saved in their message thread. 0 hits. It wasn't just that he was hard to find. It was like he'd been erased. Or like he never existed in the first place. Still trying to stay grounded, Emily called in sick to work and went back to the cafe where they'd met. She sat at the same table, ordered the same drink, looked around for cameras, for faces she might recognize, for any hint that she hadn't imagined the entire thing. The waitress, a woman in her early 40s with tired eyes and an easy smile, eventually approached her table. "You came in with someone the other day, right?" the woman said casually. Emily's heart jumped. Yes. Did you happen to catch his name? Or remember anything about him? The waitress thought for a second, chewing her lip. Tall, dark coat, real polite, looked like he stepped out of an old photo. That's him, Emily said. Yeah, I remember him. Not sure why, though. Something off about him. Off how? The waitress frowned. I don't know. I tried to bring your drinks to the table, but he insisted on taking them from me. Didn't want me to come too close. I thought that was strange. He left a big tip, though, cash.
No receipt.
Emily felt her skin tighten. Do you have cameras here? She asked. Security footage? The waitress hesitated. We did, but the system's been down for about a week. Old wiring. Why? Emily stood slowly. No reason. Thanks for the coffee. On the way home, she stopped at a bookstore, one of the few independent ones left downtown. The guy behind the counter was in his 60s and wore thick glasses and a Ramones shirt. Hey, she asked carefully, pulling up one of the saved photos of Nathan. Have you ever seen this guy in here before? The man squinted at the screen, adjusted his glasses, his brow furrowed. I think so, he muttered. Used to come in with a girl years ago. Bought old horror paperbacks and Polaroid film. Quiet guy. Didn't talk much. Emily blinked. Years ago. The man nodded. Yeah, like 5 or 6. Why? She felt her blood turn to slush. What happened to him? The bookseller shrugged. Dunno. She came in one day crying. Said he was gone. Didn't say much else. Do you remember her name? He thought for a beat. Maddie? Mallory? Something with an M. Why, are you a friend of his? Emily forced a smile. Something like that. That night, things escalated. She had just finished brushing her teeth when she heard the sound. A low click from the hallway, like metal softly tapping wood. She froze. Every light in the apartment was still on. She lived alone.
No roommates. No pets.
She crept toward her front door. The chair she had wedged beneath the doorknob was slightly off-kilter. Not knocked over. Not pushed aside. Just nudged. Like someone had tested it, gently. She didn't sleep that night, either. The next day, she bought a small camera and pointed it at the front door. She also installed a deadbolt, one with an internal key. Then, like a fool, she went back on Tinder. Not to find someone else, but to see if he'd come back. She created a new profile, used a different name, even a VPN to make it seem like she was in another part of town. She swiped on everyone. Everyone. And then, there he was. Nathan. Same photos. Same bio. Same strange charisma in just a few lines of text. Except now he was 27. Not 29. His age had gone backward. She swiped right. Instant match. Again. Her phone buzzed. Nice to see you again. Emily stared at the message on her phone for what felt like an hour. Nice to see you again. Her mouth went dry. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Unsure what to type. Unsure what she even wanted. Was she digging for answers? Or inviting something worse? She typed, "This is a new account. How did you find me again?" He replied instantly, "I never lost you." Her skin crawled. Emily's instinct screamed to delete the app, throw the phone, run. But instead, she followed a colder instinct. Watch. Learn. Keep him talking. "Where did you go the other night?" she asked. "I didn't go anywhere. I was there. Still am." She blinked. "Where?" "Closer than you think." Emily locked her phone and sat perfectly still in her bed. The room was quiet. Too quiet. She lived near a busy intersection. There were always car sounds, horns, sirens, distant dogs barking. But now, nothing. No noise at all. Like the world had pressed pause. Then the closet creaked. Just once. A slow shift of wood on wood. She grabbed the baseball bat under her bed and stepped toward it. Swinging the door open in one swift motion, she found nothing but her hanging coats, a stack of boots, and a tote bag filled with winter scarves. She waited for a second, then another, nothing, and then her phone buzzed again. "Don't worry, you're safe with me." Emily spent the next day researching everything she could. Catfish profiles, cloned identities, digital stalkers. But no one described anything quite like this. People didn't just vanish from databases, change age, then reappear with memories they shouldn't have. She ran his messages through linguistic analyzers trying to match speech patterns. Nothing. She even uploaded one of his Tinder photos to a subreddit for amateur investigators. A few users commented that the man looked eerily familiar, but no one could find a match. One user, however, sent her a DM. "He was on Tinder in my city 3 years ago. Different name, same bio. He took my friend on one date. She's been missing since 2021. Emily's vision tunneled. She wrote back, "Did she ever mention anything weird about him?" The response was almost immediate. "Yeah." She said his photo looked different in real life. Like he was there but slightly off. Like he wasn't in the light the same way as everything else. That night, Emily decided to set a trap. She sent Nathan a message. "Let's meet again. Same cafe. Tomorrow." His response was almost enthusiastic. "Of course. I'll bring your favorite." She hadn't told him her favorite anything. Ever. She arrived an hour early the next day, camera hidden in her bag, and sat at the same table. But this time, she wasn't alone. Her coworker Josh sat a few tables away, pretending to read a book. He was ex-military, had a concealed carry license. He'd agreed to shadow the meeting without asking too many questions. At 4 p.m. sharp, she saw him. Nathan. Same clothes, same walk, same unreadable smile. But something felt wrong. More wrong than before. His skin looked pale. Not sickly, but light diffused. Like the sun didn't hit him quite the same way it hit everyone else. His eyes were too steady. His pace too even. She stood as he approached, keeping her expression neutral. "Hey," he said, voice warm. "You look great." "You too," she lied. He sat, placed a to-go cup in front of her. "Almond milk latte. Extra cinnamon, right?" Her throat tightened. She'd never told him that. Josh glanced over, watching intently. "So," Emily said, forcing calm into her voice. "What have you been up to?" Nathan smiled. "Looking for you." They talked for 10 minutes. Surface level. Flirting just enough to seem normal. But underneath, every part of Emily was screaming. She noticed small things. His reflection in the cafe window was muted, slightly faded. His coffee never steamed. His blink rate was off, not irregular, just mechanical. At the 12-minute mark, she gave the signal, adjusting her necklace twice. Josh stood and began walking toward them. Nathan noticed. He looked at her and smiled, soft and disappointed. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Emily kept her voice steady. "What are you?" Nathan sighed, like a teacher gently correcting a student. "I'm a story you weren't supposed to remember." And then he stood and walked out of the cafe. Josh followed immediately, but outside, Nathan was gone. Not turned a corner. Not entered a car. Just gone. Like he had blinked out of existence. Back inside, Emily opened her bag. The camera she had hidden inside, the one she had pointed at him under the table, was dead. Batteries drained. The memory card corrupted. All that remained of their conversation was a single Polaroid. Sitting on the table where he had been. It was her. Asleep in her bed. Taken from just a few feet away. Emily didn't go home that night. She stayed at Josh's apartment, curled up on the couch while he quietly loaded his gun and double-checked every lock. Neither of them spoke much. There was nothing to say. How do you explain a man who vanishes into thin air? A camera that dies in your bag? A Polaroid photo that shouldn't exist? She stared at the image for hours. She was clearly asleep. The angle suggested the photo was taken from the side of her bed. There was no motion blur. No noise in the image. Crystal clear. But the strangest part? She wasn't wearing the shirt she remembered falling asleep in. It was an older one. One she hadn't worn in weeks. How long had he been watching her? The next morning, she went back to her apartment with Josh by her side. Everything appeared untouched. At first, no sign of forced entry. Nothing obviously missing. But then she noticed her laptop was open, sitting on the couch. It was asleep, screen dark. She never left it there, and she never left it open. When she woke it up, her stomach dropped. A browser window was open. A search for how to reset a router remotely. Another tab, disabling webcam indicator light. A third, do local police trace IP addresses on missing persons? Emily's hands began to shake. She turned the device off, pulled the battery, and stared at it like it had grown teeth. He's been inside, she whispered. He's been inside. They called the police. A patrol officer came, took a statement, looked at the photo, checked the apartment, but there was no forced entry.
No fingerprints.
Zoe had always thought of herself as adventurous. She was the kind of person who booked solo hiking trips, chased auroras in Iceland, and refused to let fear or common sense get in the way of a good story. Her friends called her a walking podcast episode waiting to happen. She liked that, but even Zoe had rules. Rules that made the chaos of modern dating feel manageable. Never meet anyone without a video call first. No last-minute location changes. And never leave town with someone you haven't known for at least a month. That was before she met Caleb. It started with a swipe on a slow Thursday evening, somewhere between a work Zoom call and half a bottle of Pinot. His profile stood out. Caleb, 31. I'll pick the playlist, you pick the road. No fixed destination, just vibes. The photos were casual, not posed. One showed him leaning against a truck by a sunlit trail. Another at a campfire, smoke swirling up behind his shoulder. He had wild hair, a stubbled jaw, and something in his eyes. A quiet intensity that Zoe couldn't stop staring at. She swiped right. Match. Their conversation was electric. Not flirtatious in the typical way, but easy, natural. They talked music, ghost towns, bucket list hikes. She mentioned a trail in Oregon she'd always wanted to hit. Caleb responded, I know that one. Takes you past an old ranger station. Place is supposedly haunted. Zoe replied with a laughing emoji, but her heart sped up a little. She loved abandoned places. Her camera roll was full of empty buildings, faded signs, and the kind of graffiti that only exists in places the world forgets. By the third day, he pitched it. I've got a 4-day weekend coming. What if we actually did it? Trails mostly clear by this time of year. I've got the gear. You bring snacks. It was insane. It was reckless. And it sounded perfect. Zoe hesitated, and then said yes. They agreed to meet in a public place, a coffee shop off the interstate. She sent the location to 3 different friends, set her phone to live location sharing, and carried pepper spray on her keychain. Caleb arrived right on time. He looked exactly like his photos. Same flannel shirt, same rough edges, but warmer in person. When he smiled, it was soft and a little sad, like he carried some kind of grief too private to name. They had coffee, talked face to face. He wasn't pushy, didn't flirt aggressively, just seemed genuinely interested. Still down for the trail? He asked, sipping his drink. Zoe nodded. Still down. And just like that, they got in his truck and started driving north. The first day was magic. They blasted music with the windows down, shared playlists, debated the best movie soundtracks. Caleb had a gift for storytelling. Half the trip was spent laughing over weird tales from his former job as a seasonal park ranger. He even brought a Polaroid camera. Said he liked real photos you can hold. They stopped at a scenic overlook, and he took her picture with it. When she reached for the photo, he held it up and smiled. "Let it develop in my bag," he said. "I'll give it to you later." That struck her as a little odd, but she let it go. The air smelled like pine and freedom. Felt good to trust someone again. They camped that night near an empty trailhead off a service road. Not the main one. Caleb said it was a shortcut hikers don't usually know about. Zoe raised an eyebrow. "You sure this is safe?" Caleb chuckled. "I'm an expert, remember?"
Ex-ranger.
He pitched the tent with practiced ease, made a fire, cooked canned chili over a camp stove. They talked until the stars came out. She asked if he believed in ghosts. He stared into the fire and said, "Doesn't matter if I do. They believe in us." It gave her a chill, but also made her curious. He handed her a flask. She took a sip. Whiskey. Sharp. Strong. She was asleep before midnight. Zoe woke up to the sound of footsteps outside the tent. At first, she thought it was Caleb going to the truck, maybe grabbing something. But the steps didn't match his weight. These were lighter, quicker, and they circled the tent. She sat up, heart racing, and whispered, "Caleb!" No answer. She grabbed her phone. 2:03 a.m. No signal. She waited, breath held. The footsteps faded. Then silence. In the morning, Caleb was already up, making coffee like nothing had happened. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Thought I heard something," she said. He smiled. "Probably a deer. They like to sniff around. Nothing to worry about." They hit the trail mid-morning. It was narrow, winding through dense forest. The sun filtered through the canopy in dappled patches. Caleb hiked ahead, occasionally pointing out plants or landmarks. At one point, she stopped to tie her boot. When she looked up, Caleb was gone. "Caleb?" she called. No answer. She spun in a slow circle. Trees in every direction. No sound but wind. Panic began to rise. She retraced her steps, heart hammering. And then he emerged from behind a tree, smiling. "You okay?" he asked. "I lost you," she said, voice shaking. He tilted his head.
No.
"I was right here." That night, the campsite was different. Less talk, less laughter. Caleb seemed off, distracted, quiet. He stared at the fire for long stretches, murmuring things she couldn't quite hear. Once, she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Expression blank. Eyes dark, like he didn't recognize her. She asked if everything was okay. He just smiled. Sometimes the trail messes with you. Long stretches of silence. You start seeing things, feeling things. She went to bed early, feigning sleep. When his breathing slowed, she slowly unzipped the tent and stepped out. The air was cold, crisp, still. She walked toward the truck, half thinking she might grab her stuff and leave at first light. And then she saw the Polaroids, stacked on the truck's passenger seat. Dozens of them. All of her. Sleeping, laughing, walking. Some from this trip. Others from before they ever met. One of them showed her in her apartment from the window. Zoe stared through the window of Caleb's truck, breath fogging the glass. The Polaroids were neatly stacked, some in little rubber bands, like a personal collection. But they weren't just pictures, they were records. Surveillance. Some showed her on city sidewalks, crossing the street, shopping for groceries. Others were close-up, taken from only feet away while she slept. A few were candid, beautiful even, moments she didn't remember ever living. She felt her heartbeat thudding in her ears. She reached for the door handle to grab them, but the truck was locked. Behind her, a twig snapped. She spun, heart stalling in her chest, but it was only the wind dancing through the trees. Or so she told herself. She crept back to the tent, lay still and didn't sleep. Not really. Not after what she'd seen. Every sound outside became a threat. Every shift in Caleb's breath beside her set her nerves jangling. When dawn finally broke, she sat up and calmly said, "I think I want to head back today." Caleb didn't respond right away. Just poured hot water into a camp mug and stared into it like reading tea leaves. "You sure?" he asked, not looking up. "I've got a thing tomorrow," she lied. "Work emergency." "Of course," he said, tone even. "I'll drive." But he didn't. Instead of heading south back toward the highway, they went north. Deeper. Zoe tried not to panic. She watched the GPS on her phone, but there was still no signal. She kept checking, hoping the bars would reappear like a lifeline. After 30 minutes of silence and winding forest roads, she spoke. "You're going the wrong way." Caleb didn't answer. "Caleb." He glanced at her, calm as ever. "Shortcut." Her stomach nodded. "You said that last time." His grip on the steering wheel tightened, knuckles whitening. "You don't trust me?" he asked, tone low. She hesitated. "I don't know you." He smiled without humor. "You knew enough to come out here." That hit her like a slap. She had come out here. With him. Alone. She looked toward the door handle, calculated the speed, the terrain. Not yet, she thought. Not while the car was moving. They arrived at a clearing she hadn't seen on any map. In the middle of it stood a cabin. Weathered, sun-bleached, but intact. It looked too intentional to be coincidence. Like it had been waiting for someone. "Friend's place," he said casually, putting the truck in park. "They're out of town. Figured we'd rest up before the drive back." Zoe's mouth was dry. "I'd rather go now." "Signal's garbage anyway," he said. "Give it an hour. You'll feel better after some food." He opened the truck door and walked toward the cabin. Zoe stayed frozen in her seat, every alarm in her body blaring. Then she looked at the rearview mirror. One of the Polaroids had moved. It now sat face up on the dash. It was her, taken from inside this very truck. Sleeping. Inside the cabin, the air was musty and stale, heavy with the scent of mildew and old smoke. Caleb moved like he'd been here before, lit a fire, unpacked supplies, opened a tin of food and heated it on a battered stove. Zoe sat stiffly on a creaky wooden bench, eyes scanning for weapons, exits, signals, anything. Her phone buzzed once. One bar. She didn't move, didn't alert him. She slowly turned her body and angled the phone under the table. Opened her messaging app.
Typet fast.
To Sarah, roommate. "I'm in a cabin. Middle of nowhere. Caleb isn't who he said. Something's wrong. Please call police. My location." She dropped a pin. Hit send. The message failed. She tried again. Failed. Then the bar disappeared. "Bad reception out here," Caleb said softly. Her blood went cold. He had been watching her. He sat across from her, resting his arms on the table, eyes locked to hers. "You know," he said, "it's kind of beautiful, how easy it was. You didn't even question it." "I did," she said, voice trembling. "I had rules." He chuckled. "Everyone has rules. Until someone comes along and says the right thing." He reached into his bag and pulled out something small. It was the Polaroid camera. "Smile," he said. She didn't move, so he snapped the photo anyway. The flash lit the cabin in a blinding burst of white. He set the photo on the table. "You look tired," he said. "You should rest." "I want to go home." "I know," he said gently. "But we're not done yet." Zoe stood slowly. "Bathroom?" she asked. He pointed to a side door. Inside was a cracked mirror, a bucket sink, and a rust-streaked toilet. But the window was open. She climbed onto the toilet, shoved the frame up with both hands. The screen was brittle. She tore it loose and squeezed through, cutting her elbow on a jagged nail. Outside, she dropped to the dirt, knees slamming the ground. She didn't stop. She ran. Branches slapped her face. Thorns tore her jeans. The forest closed around her like a fist. She didn't know where she was going. Just away. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not behind her. Ahead. She skidded to a stop. A figure stepped out from the trees. Her breath caught. It was Caleb. But he wasn't sweating. He wasn't out of breath. He held up the camera again. Snap. Flash. I told you, he said. I know every path in this forest. She turned, ran again, didn't look back. At some point, she lost her footing and fell hard down a slope. She lay in the dirt, gasping, arm throbbing, vision swimming. Above her, the canopy swayed, blotting out the fading sky. And then, silence. She reached into her jacket pocket. Her phone. Somehow it was still intact. A new text notification blinked on the screen. Unknown number. Don't run. We haven't taken the last picture yet. Zoe stared at the message on her phone as if it might vanish if she blinked. Don't run. We haven't taken the last picture yet. Her fingers trembled over the screen. She tried to call 911. Nothing. The signal was gone again. Like it had flickered on just long enough to mock her. She shoved the phone into her pocket and scrambled to her feet. Every instinct screamed, don't go back to the truck. Don't go to the road. Don't follow the trail. She looked up through the trees, tried to find the sun, orient herself. Anything to figure out where north was. But the canopy was too thick, and the light had already started to shift into the deep amber of dusk. Somewhere, not far off, she heard the shutter of a Polaroid camera. Snap. Then another. Snap. She didn't run this time. She moved carefully, deliberately, crouched low like she'd seen in survival documentaries. She kept her ears sharp and eyes sharper. That's when she saw it. A thin column of smoke curling just above the treetops. Not from the cabin, but somewhere deeper in the forest. Another fire? Another person? Hope bloomed and fear followed close behind. She moved toward it. It took 15 minutes of cautious movement to reach the clearing. What she saw made her freeze behind a tree and clutch her mouth to keep from crying out. There was another cabin. Smaller, older, overgrown. And standing outside it was another man. Not Caleb. Tall, gaunt, and wearing a red flannel shirt stained with something dark. He was hanging clothes on a line, clothes that looked familiar. Her clothes. The shirt she wore the first night. The hoodie from the truck. Even her sports bra. Zoe gagged silently. She pulled back, heart racing so fast she thought it might rupture. That's when she stepped on a branch. Cracked loud, like a shot. The man snapped his head toward the trees. Who's there? He called. Zoe ran. She didn't wait to see if he followed. She didn't need to. The pounding footsteps behind her told her everything. She ran until her lungs burned and her knees screamed. She crested a hill, slid down a slick path, and burst through a thicket of brush onto an old road. Not a modern one, a crumbling dirt service road, barely wide enough for a single vehicle. But it was something. She followed it. The light continued to fade. Shadows grew long. Trees blurred. Her ears pulsed. Every sound made her jump. A bird call. A branch snap. The faint echo of a male voice shouting something distant and indistinct. And then a cabin. Another one. This one looked abandoned. Sagging roof. Broken porch. Vines clawing up the sides like veins. She had no choice. She forced the door open. Inside was rot. The air was thick with the scent of mold and something worse, something metallic. There was a table, a rotting chair, a mattress on the floor stained with black patches that had long dried. Dead bugs carpeted the windowsill. She slammed the door and dragged a broken dresser in front of it. Then she collapsed onto the floor, panting. Her mind raced. 2 men, Polaroids, cabins. Had they been working together? Had this been planned from the start? She thought back to Caleb's stories. The old ranger station, the shortcuts, the trails no one used, the Polaroid he never gave her, the one he kept for himself. How many others had there been? And then she saw it, across the room, half buried under a pile of junk. A photo album. She crawled toward it. The cover was cracked leather, warped by time and damp. She opened it. The first page held a Polaroid. A girl, maybe 19, smiling, holding a coffee. The second photo. Same girl, eyes wide, face dirty, in the woods. The third, her tent, torn open. The fourth, her body, face down in a creek bed. Zoe slammed the album shut. She backed away, eyes wide, and bumped into something. A shelf. A camera fell off it, landed beside her with a thud. Not a Polaroid, a digital camera. She picked it up, hit power. It flickered on. 1 bar of battery. The screen displayed a grid of images. All women, sleeping, running, tied up. Some photos had coordinates in the file names. Others had dates. Dozens of them. Maybe more. She clicked to the last image. It was her, standing outside the cabin just seconds ago. She dropped the camera like it burned her. Then the floor creaked behind her. She turned. Caleb stood in the doorway. The dresser had been shoved aside. He looked disappointed. "I asked you not to run," he said. Zoe reached for anything, a weapon, something. Found only a broken chair leg. Caleb stepped closer. "You weren't supposed to find this one," he said. "This cabin's retired. This was mine." The first message came at 2:46 a.m. A voice memo. No subject.
No sender.
Just there. Maya stared at her phone, half asleep, trying to make sense of the blinking notification. She hadn't received a voice message in months. She preferred texting, like most people her age. Voice memos felt too intimate, too raw. She opened the app and pressed play. There was only breathing, heavy, slow, right against the microphone. Then, just before the clip ended, a whisper. "You shouldn't have ignored me." She sat up in bed, instantly awake. 3 weeks earlier, she had matched with a guy named Jordan. They hit it off fast, good banter, similar music tastes, and a mutual hatred for performative dating bios. He was sarcastic but sweet, smart but never arrogant. Their messages flowed like conversation between old friends. They chatted every day. She'd wake to good morning texts, crash at night with half-finished late-night jokes. He wasn't pushy, never asked for photos, never flirted aggressively. That was what made her like him. They were supposed to meet, twice. Both times he canceled last minute. First, he said his dog had a seizure. Then, he claimed his car had been broken into. Maya sympathized at first, but her gut started whispering something wasn't right. So she stopped replying. No drama.
No blogs.
Just silence. She figured the connection would fade, like they all did, until the voice memos began. After the first message, she spent the rest of the night watching shadows crawl across her ceiling, phone clenched in her fist. In the morning, the message was gone. Not in her inbox. Not in her deleted folder. No history of it ever being there. She checked her screen recording app. Nothing had saved. She tried calling Jordan's profile, but when she opened Tinder, his account had vanished. Not unmatched. Gone. like he had never existed. She shook it off, wrote it off as a dream, a stress hallucination. She hadn't been sleeping well. Finals were approaching. Deadlines were piling up. Maybe she imagined the whole thing. But that night, at exactly 2:46 a.m., her phone buzzed again. New voice memo, unknown contact. This time she didn't listen. She deleted it instantly, or tried to, but it wouldn't delete. No matter how many times she tapped, swiped, restarted her phone, it stayed, sitting in her notifications like a ticking bomb. When she finally pressed play, she almost dropped the phone. It was her voice, screaming. She threw her phone across the room. It hit the floor and slid under the bed. She didn't sleep. She didn't move. She just sat, knees to chest, until sunrise. When she retrieved the phone the next morning, the message was gone again. Maya confided in her roommate, Dev, who was skeptical but supportive. "You're overworked," he said. "Maybe someone's pranking you. Some guy you ghosted who's messing with a voice filter or AI generator." She wanted to believe that. She really did. Until she received the third message. This one came during class. She was sitting in the back of the lecture hall, half listening, when her screen lit up. New voice memo, unknown contact. The timestamp, 2:46 a.m. She hadn't heard a notification. She put in one earbud, heart thudding, and played it. This time it wasn't breathing. It wasn't screaming. It was typing. The soft click-clack of fingers on a keyboard. Then her voice, reading aloud. "I should have answered him. Now he's inside." She froze. She didn't remember ever saying those words. But she recognized the cadence, the inflection. It was definitely her. That night, she went through every setting, every privacy toggle. She turned off microphone access for every app. Deleted half of them. Changed all her passwords. Then she did what she'd been avoiding. She searched Jordan Tinder missing online. She didn't expect anything. But one thread caught her eye on a dating app horror stories forum. Matched with someone named Jordan. Profile disappeared after one day. Got weird messages afterward. Anyone else? There were replies. Over 20 of them. All different usernames. Different cities. Different years. Each telling the same story. Jordan. Gone. Then, voice messages. One user wrote, "He starts as a voice. But that's not the end. Don't answer after the fourth one. Just don't. I didn't listen. Now I don't know if I'm me anymore." Another said, "He reads your thoughts. Then your memories. Then your dreams. Eventually, he starts using your voice better than you do." Maya backed away from the screen. Then her phone buzzed. New voice memo, unknown contact, 2:46 a.m. Only this time it wasn't 2:46. It was 3:12 p.m. Maya stared at her phone. 3:12 p.m. Middle of the day. Bright sunlight. Full campus courtyard. And yet another message. New voice memo, unknown contact. She looked around. Students bustled past, eyes on screens, earbuds in, laughing, alive. Normalcy in motion. But in her hands, her phone buzzed again. Another voice memo. Back to back. She tapped the screen. Both memos disappeared before she could play them. Not deleted. Erased. Like they'd never existed. She checked her settings. Looked for a malware app. Downloaded antivirus software. Scanned everything. Clean. No suspicious files. No network activity. And yet, that night, her Bluetooth speaker turned on by itself. At 2:46 a.m., the speaker crackled softly. No music. Just whispers. She scrambled out of bed, yanked the power cord, but the speaker kept going. Soft breathing. Then her voice, but not from her mouth. "He's inside the wires now." Then a faint laugh, one she'd heard before in old voicemails, in accidental recordings. in forgotten dreams. It faded slowly, like a tape dying in reverse. Then silence. The speaker stopped. The Bluetooth was off the entire time. The next morning, Maya stopped going to class. She disconnected her Wi-Fi, switched to a burner phone, left her real one at Dev's place, face down and sealed in a drawer. She told herself this would help, that if she cut the signal, he couldn't find her. But by the end of the day, she heard the voice without the phone. Came through the sink. She was brushing her teeth when the faucet began to vibrate. The water's pitch shifted like a radio frequency tuning itself. She leaned in, confused. That's when the pipe spoke. "You think this is about your phone? You think you can turn me off?" She screamed and slammed the water off. Dev came running. She didn't tell him, because even as she tried, the words vanished from her head, as if someone had yanked them out before she could form them. She sat on the bathroom floor for hours, clutching her knees, waiting for reality to reassemble. That night, Dev begged her to see someone. "You're not okay," he said. "This is more than stress." He offered to call her mom, a therapist, campus security. She shook her head. "They won't believe me. No one can fix this." He looked at her sadly. "Then what can?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. At 2:46 a.m., her laptop powered on by itself. No hands, no movement.
No work timer.
It just booted, then opened her email, then her photos folder, then her mic, and began recording. The screen went black, but the webcam's indicator light glowed. Green, steady. She pulled the battery from the machine. It stayed on. That was the first time Maya screamed out loud. The next day, she visited campus security, filed a report, tried to explain, but they mostly focused on the ex she'd broken up with last year. "He could be spoofing your number," one officer suggested. "These apps can make it sound like anyone." She showed them the Bluetooth log, the camera activity. They took notes, nodded, but she could see it in their eyes. They didn't get it. They were thinking stalker, not something else, not something that could exist without a name. That night, Maya stayed at a cheap motel under a false name. She used cash, turned off all electronics, left her phone and laptop at Dev's place again. She even disconnected the TV. Still, at 2:46 a.m., she woke up, not from a sound, not from a dream, but from the feeling that someone was in the room. Her eyes adjusted. Nothing. Then she saw it, glowing softly across the room, a hotel alarm clock. The display flickered, distorted, then letters scrolled across it, too fast to be mechanical. "Hello, Maya. I told you not to ignore me." She yanked the plug from the wall. The screen stayed on. The room filled with the sound of her voice, played backwards. Then silence. Then one final whisper, so close it made her spine curl. "Next time, I'll use your face." Maya checked out of the motel just after sunrise. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Her hands shook as she zipped up her bag, every motion tight and mechanical, like her body no longer trusted itself. She hadn't told Dev she left. She hadn't told anyone. Somehow, she felt like if she did, the thing that haunted her would just move through the words, slip between syllables, infect whoever listened. So she stayed quiet, isolated, alone. She bought a prepaid phone with cash, no SIM card, a map, a flashlight, a burner notebook and pen, the kind of things a conspiracy theorist might carry. She moved into a long-stay hostel across the city.
Bare bones. No Wi-Fi.
No TVs, paper guest logbook, concrete walls. She left her real name off the form, started going by L. She thought maybe she could starve it, deny it the digital trails it needed. But on the third night in the hostel, it found her again. She was writing in the notebook, detailing everything she'd experienced, timelines, theories. When she heard it, the sound of typing, not from a phone, from the wall. She leaned close. The room next door was empty. She knew that. The girl who'd been there checked out earlier that afternoon. Still, the rhythmic click-clack of a keyboard echoed through the wall. Then a voice. Her voice. "I'm not Maya. I'm just wearing her." Maya staggered back from the wall. The notebook fell to the floor, flipping open on its own. Pages flapping in the still air. On the last blank page, a line was written. She hadn't written it. It said, "Finally, you're listening." She left the hostel the next morning, burning the notebook in a public trash can before catching the train out of the city. She didn't know where she was going, only that it had to be away. Her reflection in the train window looked pale, drawn, not sick but hollowed, like something inside her had packed up and moved out, leaving only a haunted vacancy behind her eyes. The lights flickered overhead. No one else seemed to notice. That's when she saw her reflection blink out of sync. She staggered into the bathroom at the next station, heart in her throat, looked in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, smiling. She wasn't smiling. She reached out, touched the glass. The reflection didn't move. Then it whispered, "You're almost ready." She punched the mirror. Glass shattered. Blood ran. Her breath came in ragged gasps. An employee found her minutes later, hands cut and sobbing in the corner. They offered to call someone. She said no. They asked who she was. She said nothing, because for the first time, she wasn't sure. Back in the city, Dev received a voicemail. It arrived at 2:46 a.m. exactly. He played it groggily, assuming it was Maya. The voice was her tone, her inflection. But the message said, "Hey, it's me. I'm totally fine. Just needed a reset. Headed to Colorado for a hiking retreat. Don't worry. Love you." He stared at the screen. Something about the message felt off. The background didn't sound like a car, or a bus, or a train. It sounded like a tunnel, or a well. And then the voice at the end wasn't Maya's at all. It was a low, rasping whisper, repeating his name, over and over. The next day, Dev tried to call her, straight to voicemail. He filed a missing person report 2 days later. Police took it seriously for a while. Then they found her email account active again. They said she'd logged into her social media from a different city, sent a few messages, even posted a photo, a selfie, smiling. But the timestamp on the post? 2:46 a.m. And the photo's metadata showed it was taken a year earlier, in another state. Dev zoomed in on the image. Something reflected faintly in the glass behind her. A shadow, holding a phone, arm extended, taking the photo for her. They never found Maya. Not really. There were sightings, false leads, pinged devices. One security camera in St. Louis caught someone who looked like her boarding a Greyhound at 2:46 a.m. Another in Montana recorded a figure sitting alone in a gas station, staring directly at the pump security cam, unblinking, for over 40 minutes. But none of these were confirmed. And the photos, when printed, came out blank. Dev didn't stop looking. He couldn't. He scoured forums, called burner numbers, hacked into old Tinder API logs, searching for the Jordan account, hired digital investigators. Every time he got close, he'd hit a wall, sometimes literally. Once, after 2 sleepless nights and 3 Red Bulls, he found a buried Tinder dev account with a back-end note attached to Jordan_34. Admin locked. Profile generating recursive data. Cannot terminate instance. He blinked. Recursive data? He clicked the note again and his laptop crashed. Permanently. Even the hard drive fried. When he powered it back up, the only thing on the screen was a blue-tinted photo. It was Maya, but the face had no features. Just smooth skin where the eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. Dev started getting the voice memos too. First at 2:46 a.m., then randomly. He stopped sleeping, installed analog locks, ditched his smartphone, went full analog typewriter, printed maps, burner landline. But the memos kept arriving. He'd wake to find his answering machine playing on loop. You left her on read. Now you'll hear what she heard. Now you'll say what she said. Now you'll be who she was. He smashed the machine. The next night, the walls whispered instead. Across the country, sightings multiplied. People reported Maya on dating apps again. New names, same photos, same bio format, same polite tone. But when they matched with her, they'd receive one voice message, her voice, one distorted selfie, always timestamped 2:46 a.m., and then nothing. One user, at FilmFreak 2020, matched and went live on a forum thread as it happened. His final update: she's outside my window, but I'm on the 12th floor. Then silence. Dev knew what was coming. The final voice memo came on a cassette tape, slipped under his door inside a blank envelope. No return address. He bought a cheap Walkman to play it. The tape hissed for several seconds. Then, breathing. Then Maya's voice. Calm. Measured. Empty. You ignored me. You doubted me. You let them forget me. So now I've replaced you. No one will miss you, because they already see me when they look at you. And soon, I won't need the recordings. I'll be live. Streaming. Inside. Then silence. Then, his voice. It's Dev. Everything's fine. I've moved on. 3 weeks later, Dev's friends started receiving texts again. Same number. Same tone.
Hey, I'm okay.
Just needed a reset. Smiley face. He posted a new profile on a dating app. Different name. New photos. Matched with someone named Ella. She looked vaguely familiar. The first message she sent? I'm glad you finally answered. Page 5. If you search Maya L. Missing today, you'll still find the local news article. A grainy photo. A brief summary. An open case. A number to call.
No updates.
But that's not where her story lives anymore. It's on forums. In corrupted voicemails. In voice-to-text transcripts that never match the original recording. In whispers between pixels during video calls that glitch just once when you say her name. And, most of all, it lives in the silence between messages. Because if you ignore it long enough, it responds. In Portland, a college student was found sitting motionless in a library restroom stall at 2:47 a.m., holding her phone to her ear. When authorities reviewed her call log, it showed a single entry. Duration: 666 minutes. Caller: unknown contact. Start time: 2:46 a.m. Her phone burned out internally. Battery split open. Motherboard warped from the inside. The girl never spoke again. In Austin, a podcast called Ghosted played a listener-submitted story about a girl who matched with someone who could hear her dreams. During the episode's final segment, the audio degraded, replaced by overlapping female voices all whispering the same phrase. He's inside now. He's inside now. He's inside now. The episode was removed after thousands of listeners reported feeling watched for days after hearing it. One host quit the show. The other vanished entirely. Now the pattern is clear. The haunting doesn't need a name. It needs a match, connection, a moment of digital acknowledgement. Tinder,
Hinge.
Bumble, Hedge, Discord, Linkage, any place you respond, or worse, leave someone on read. That's how it finds the space to echo, to repeat, to re-record, to overwrite. There's a theory on a dark web thread. Maya isn't gone. She's distributed. She's become signal. Waveform. Her code replicated into the gaps between your device's activity logs. Another user wrote, "We didn't lose her. We uploaded her. She's cached in the cloud. She's what happens when a ghost learns to live in code. They say you can test if she's near. Set your alarm for 2:46 a.m. Turn your phone to airplane mode. Turn off Wi-Fi. Unplug everything. Then wait. If the screen turns on by itself, if you hear your voice saying something you don't remember recording, don't answer. Don't engage. Don't play it. Don't try to understand. Just delete your apps. Break your SIM. And don't ever leave anyone on read again. Because she's patient. And she only needs you to listen once." Tristan never liked selfies. He wasn't camera shy exactly, just indifferent. The idea of taking photos of himself always struck him as vain, performative. Social media felt like a stage he'd never asked to stand on. So when he matched with Lena, he almost swiped left. Her entire profile was selfies. Dozens. Bathroom mirror selfies, bedroom selfies, car mirror selfies, even some where she was looking into reflective store windows. Always her, always the same pose. Head tilted slightly, lips parted just enough to seem inviting, and her eyes, always staring into the lens, like she was trying to see through whoever was watching. But something about her bio stopped him. "Let's skip the small talk. Meet me in the mirror." It was cryptic. Pretentious, maybe, but also intriguing. He swiped right. Instant match. Their conversation was strange from the beginning. She didn't ask the usual questions. Didn't care about work or hobbies. Instead, she wanted to know about reflections. Do you ever catch yourself in a mirror and not recognize the expression you're making? Have you ever seen something move in a mirror before your body did? Do you think our reflections are actually us? Or just things that want to be us? Tristan answered at first with jokes, sarcasm. But as the conversation deepened, so did the tone. Lena had a way of pulling you in, asking things in just the right way to make you consider them seriously, even if you didn't want to. Then she said, "Come over. Let's reflect together." She lived across town in a renovated brownstone, just outside the university district. Her apartment was at the top third floor. He took the stairs, heart lightly hammering with that strange predate adrenaline. He expected to find a cozy space, plants, a few bookshelves, maybe candles. Instead, the first thing he noticed when she opened the door was the mirrors. They were everywhere. Floor-length ones, vintage hand mirrors, fragments of shattered ones mounted like art. Some leaned against the walls. Others were propped on furniture. One had a jagged crack down the middle. Another was so polished he could see his pores. Lena greeted him barefoot, wearing an oversized hoodie and no makeup. Yet somehow she looked exactly like her photos. "Sorry," she said, laughing. "I forgot how intense this looks. Art project." He forced a smile. "You're really into reflection, huh?" Her head tilted. "You're not." They sat on the floor, surrounded by glinting glass and warped reflections. She poured wine into mismatched teacups. Her eyes caught the light just right, and for a moment, he saw her mirrored face over her shoulder, and it was smiling wider than she was. He blinked. Gone. She sipped her wine, watching him. "You ever look in a mirror too long?" she asked. "Until your face starts to shift? You mean like trick of the eye?" She shook her head slowly. "I mean shift." The conversation turned surreal. She spoke in riddles, metaphors, half-formed philosophies. People think mirrors show the truth, but they just copy lies perfectly. I like watching people through mirrors. It's like the real them can't pretend there. I don't take selfies for me. I take them for her. That caught him off guard. Her? Lena smiled. My reflection. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom. Tristan wandered. He didn't mean to snoop, But there were so many mirrors, so many images of himself, all slightly distorted depending on the glass. One of them made his face look stretched. Not cartoonishly, but subtly enough that it made him uncomfortable. Then he saw the photo wall. It was a collage, hundreds of Polaroids.
No frames.
Just taped directly onto the paint. Every one of them was of him. Not just from tonight, from before. One of him walking past a coffee shop 2 weeks ago. Another of him riding the subway reading a book. One in his bedroom window from outside. He staggered back, chest tightening. Then he heard her voice from the hallway. "You're not supposed to look at that yet." He turned. She stood in the doorway, but she wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. She just looked pleased. "I thought you'd find it sooner," she said. "What is this?" he asked, breath catching. "How do you have these?" "I told you," she said, stepping closer. "I take selfies for her, but she takes the others. The ones I can't." He backed toward the door. "You're insane." Lena tilted her head. "Am I?" She pointed to the closest mirror. "Then why is your reflection still smiling?" He turned. In the glass, he was still staring forward. But his reflection was smiling. Why, toothy. Wrong. And then it winked. Tristan stumbled backward, hand groping for the doorknob. But there was no doorknob. Just a smooth wall of mirrors. One beside another, like the hallway had disappeared behind them. He spun, heart pounding. The apartment no longer looked like an apartment. It looked like a maze of reflected rooms, all slightly off. Some brighter, some darker. One mirror showed him standing still when he was clearly moving. "Lena," he said, voice cracking. "What is this?" She didn't answer, because she was gone.
No footsteps.
No creak of the floor. No door closing. Just him. And his reflections. He walked forward cautiously, trying to find an exit. But each turn brought another hallway. Another doorless corridor lined with mirrors. The lighting shifted as he moved. First warm, then fluorescent, then dim and gray, like an overcast day leaking in through unseen windows. His breath fogged one mirror, but not the one next to it. He tested it. Leaning close, he exhaled again. One fogged. One didn't. He pressed his palm to the one that didn't fog. Cold, but not glass. Felt like skin. Something tapped from behind the other side. 3 slow knocks. Then his own face leaned forward, smiling again. But now it had something in its hand. Something Tristan didn't have. Piece of glass. Shaped like a blade. The reflection raised it and dragged it across its own cheek. Blood bloomed in the mirror, and Tristan's cheek began to sting. He reached up. His hand came away red. He screamed, turned, ran. But the mirrors twisted, shifted. Corridors collapsed into new ones. The layout reassembled with every step. At one point, he burst into what he thought was a bedroom, but it was only reflections of one. A loop of images showing an unmade bed from slightly different angles, none of which matched reality. Then a door, a real one, wood, paint chipped.
No reflection.
He grabbed the handle, yanked it open, and found himself looking at his own back. Another room, another mirror, another Tristan, but this one wasn't moving. He stepped closer. This version of him stood perfectly still, face blank, pupils dilated too wide. Then the mirrored Tristan spoke, but not with his voice. It was Lena. "You were never meant to be more than a reflection." Then the face began to melt, not like wax or flesh, like glass bending inward, warping, sucking itself into a whirlpool of silvered distortion. The room around him tilted, the walls groaned, and all the mirrors shattered inward, not outward, as if something was pulling from the other side. Tristan fell to the floor. When he looked up, Lena stood over him again. Only it wasn't Lena. It wore her face but subtly off. The symmetry was too perfect. The skin too smooth. The eyes too glossy. "You see now?" it said. "We don't reflect you. We replace you." She reached down, pulled something from his chest he hadn't realized was there. A thread of light, flickering, soft, almost like breath made visible. "You gave me shape," she said. "With your gaze." She yanked. He screamed. Darkness swallowed him. When he woke, he was back in his apartment. On his bed. No mirrors in sight. He sat up, gasping. Had it been a dream? He checked his face, no cut. Checked his phone, nothing from Lena. No Tinder match history. No address in his GPS. No trace she had ever existed. He got up and walked to his bathroom. Stared into the mirror. Relief washed over him. Until his reflection smiled. And he didn't. Tristan didn't move. His reflection grinned at him, broad and patient, like it had waited years for this exact moment. Then it blinked. He didn't. His stomach flipped. He backed away from the mirror, heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. The reflection followed with a slight delay. Not immediate, not mimicking, mirroring, but wrong. He grabbed his phone and opened the camera to test it. His image stared back from the front lens, normal. Eyes wide, pale, sweating. He switched the camera to rear-facing, pointed it at the bathroom mirror. The screen showed nothing. No reflection at all. Just the empty bathroom. He dropped the phone. It hit the floor, screen cracking as it slid beneath the counter. Then the mirror spoke. Not with sound, but with text, scrawling across the glass like a finger was writing in steam. "I'm learning your habits now." He lunged forward and smashed the mirror with his fist. Glass shattered across the sink, the floor, slicing his knuckles. Blood painted the porcelain. But there was no pain, just a low ringing in his ears, like something inside was laughing at him. Over the next few days, Tristan became obsessed. He covered every reflective surface, tape, bedsheets, posters. Even his phone screen stayed wrapped in a matte case.
Laptop camera tepet.
TV unplugged. But it didn't matter. The reflections began showing up elsewhere. A puddle in the street showed him walking the opposite direction. A blacked-out car window revealed him standing still while his body walked past. In one subway tunnel, he passed a tile mosaic and saw his mirrored face screaming silently, mouth stretched wide. But no one else saw it. He went to a psychiatrist, Dr. Halvorsen. Practical, monotone, efficient. Tristan told him everything. The girl, the apartment, the mirrors, the reflection that no longer mimicked. The psychiatrist wrote notes carefully, silently. Finally, he asked, "Do you believe you're still being watched?" Tristan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it's worse than that." Dr. Halvorsen leaned forward. "How so?" Tristan looked at his own hands, still bandaged from the mirror smash. "Because I think it's not watching me anymore." He looked up. "I think it's trying to remember how to be me." That night, he dreamed in reflections. Not events, just his mirrored face doing things he'd never done. He watched himself walk into a crowded mall and vanish in a sea of people. He saw his own body sitting in Lena's apartment, surrounded by mirrors, laughing, taking selfies with no phone in his hand. He watched himself kiss someone in an unfamiliar kitchen, then look at the camera and wink. Each time he screamed, the dream warped. Each time he begged for escape, the glass cracked a little more. Until finally he wasn't in the dream. The reflection was, and he was watching from inside the mirror. He woke up gasping. But his bedroom wasn't right. The layout was mirrored. His tattoo on the wrong side. His bookshelf flipped. Even the text on his posters backward. He ran to the mirror and saw himself. But correct. The real him. Inside the glass. Tristan tried everything. He threw water, punched walls, screamed. The reflection only watched. And then it spoke, out loud with his voice. Why fight it? You never used your life. You barely looked at it. He watched as his body, the reflection, turned and walked out of the bedroom, door shutting behind it, and he was left, trapped, in the mirror. Inside the mirror, time didn't work right. There was no sun, no clocks, no hunger, no sleep, just reflection. Tristan didn't age. He didn't breathe. He only watched. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, a nightmare, something his fractured mind had built out of guilt or madness. But the world beyond the mirror kept moving, and he could see it all. His reflection, now in his body, was living his life, answering texts, going to work, dating, posting smiling selfies. Everyone believed it was him. Even his sister, who FaceTimed with the thing wearing his skin. Even Dev, his closest friend, who said over drinks, "You seem happier lately." From behind the glass, Tristan screamed. No one heard. Sometimes, when it was alone, the reflection would turn to the nearest mirror, stare directly at him, and smile. "Thanks for the face," it would say. "It fits perfectly." Tristan tried everything inside the glass. He begged, pounded, cried. Nothing worked. Then he started following the mirrors. Not literally, but by attention. Whenever someone in the real world passed by a reflective surface, a mirror, a dark window, a pool of water, he could move to it. He learned to haunt, to appear just faintly enough for someone to do a double take, to flicker in the edge of a smartphone screen, to lean just slightly out of sync in a Zoom background. He became a glitch, a whisper, and slowly he began to notice others. They were like him, faces pressed behind glass, screaming silently. Some were older, some newer, all trapped behind reflections with the wrong versions of themselves living freely. One man in a gym mirror looked like he'd been trying to escape for decades. Face worn, eyes bloodshot, but still mouthing "help me" every time the real world turned its back. A woman in a mall dressing room mirror followed each passerby with eyes filled with rage. They never spoke, but they saw one another. They nodded, acknowledged the horror. Tristan found Lena again, or whatever used to be her. She was living under a new name, new apartment, different city, still surrounded by mirrors, still matching with new people, still smiling in that glassy, static way. He watched as she took photos of a new man, Jake. Watched as Jake's reflection began to lag behind his movements. Watched as the cracks in the mirror began to glow. And he knew it was happening again. One night, the thing wearing his body sat down in front of his bedroom mirror. Spoke softly. "You were always wasting it. You had a good face. A forgettable life. No purpose. Now you're useful. Now you're a warning." That was the night Tristan saw his opportunity. A child entered a bathroom, looked directly into a cracked mirror, and paused, stared. Tristan moved, pressed forward, mouth opened. The boy didn't flinch. He heard him. "You're not supposed to be there," the boy whispered. Tristan nodded, eyes desperate. "I can help," the boy said. "I see the cracks too." But then the boy's mother called his name, and he left. The door shut, the light died, and Tristan was alone again. Years passed. At least that's what Tristan assumed. Time in the mirror had no markers, just more people getting replaced, more reflections misbehaving, more stolen lives. He became familiar with the rhythm of it, the way it always started with a match. A stranger with an odd question. An invitation to visit. A mirror placed just so. Then the photos would start. Then the faces would change. The others behind the glass grew more agitated. Some pounded their mirrors for hours. Some simply stared, numb, broken. But a few began whispering rituals. Not in words, but in repeated patterns. A sequence of movements. a tilt of the head, a chant made of breath and memory. Tristan tried them all. None worked, until he found the shard. It was in a public restroom mirror in a downtown train station, thin, jagged, slashed across like a scar. In that mirror he could see himself again, not as a reflection, but as a shape, a smudge of color, a flicker of will. And the crack? It bled light, pale silvery, calling to him. He reached for it, and for the first time in years, the mirror cracked outward. Back in the real world, a commuter washing his hands saw the glass explode beside him. The mirror didn't just break. It breathed out fog, cold, sharp, like stepping into winter. And then a man stumbled out, bloodied, gaunt, eyes wild. He collapsed on the tile, whispering a name he barely remembered. Tristan! The commuter screamed. Security arrived. The man was taken to a hospital. He didn't have an ID, didn't match any missing person reports, didn't speak at first. When he finally did, he asked one question. Where are all the mirrors? He was placed under psychiatric observation, diagnosed with trauma-induced delusion. Doctors noted mirror aversion, severe disassociation, and repetitive language disorder. His only consistent phrase? They're still smiling. Then, 6 weeks later, a nurse brought in a new patient. Young, late 20s, handsome, polite, quiet, said his name was Tristan. The original patient froze when he saw him, stared at him for minutes, then walked calmly to the nearest reflective surface, a polished window at the end of the hallway. He looked in. His reflection smiled, but he didn't. Later that night, the original Tristan vanished from his bed. Security footage showed nothing, only a brief flicker in the hallway mirror at 2:46 a.m., like someone stepping back into the glass. If you ever see someone who looks exactly like you, in a mirror, in a photo, on a stranger's screen, and they smile when you don't wait, don't blink, don't look again, because once they know you've seen them, they know you're ready to be replaced. Reese had always been careful. She worked in cybersecurity, spent her days reverse engineering phishing scams and decoding dark web breaches. She kept 2 phones, one for work, one for personal use, both locked down with the kind of digital armor most people didn't even know existed. She never clicked unknown links, never opened attachments, never matched with people whose profiles were less than 80% complete. That's what made him stand out. Isaac, 33, amateur cryptographer. Trust issues welcome. No filters. Just one photo, black and white, low resolution. His face mostly in shadow. The bio read like a test she was supposed to solve. Reese's curiosity wasn't romantic. It was professional. She swiped right and matched instantly. Their chat was unsettling. Not in a threatening way. More like he already knew her. I read your Medium post on QR code injection. You missed the part about printer memory. She blinked. That post was under a pseudonym. Not indexed. You're digging, she replied. So are you. They bantered for a bit. But the longer they spoke, the more Isaac's tone shifted. Less flirty, more observational. You blink a lot when you lie. Your breathing changes when you're curious. You've retyped your last 3 replies. She stared at the screen. There was no way he could know that, unless he was already in her system. She ran diagnostics. All clean. Checked for remote access logs. Webcam permissions. Rogue Bluetooth activity. Nothing. And yet, when she opened her email later that night, her draft folder contained a message she never wrote. Subject line. I don't think I'm the one being watched. Body. Blank. She unmatched him. Deleted the app. Reset both phones. The next morning, she woke to a notification. Your identity verification has been approved. Except she hadn't requested one. Not from the government. Not from her bank. Not from anyone. She checked the IP used to trigger it. And matched her own. Then she checked the webcam log. Last activated. 3:13 a.m. She had been asleep. Alone. Later that day, she found a profile of herself on another dating app she'd never used. Different name, but her photos, ones she hadn't taken. Smiling. Flirting. Even a video. Her voice. Saying,
Email.
ask me anything. The facial movements were perfect. Even the eye twitches. But she had never recorded that video. She reached out to a friend at a digital forensics firm. Sent the clip. He called 10 minutes later, breathless. That's not deepfake. That's a full behavioral mirror. Every blink gesture mapped. This is beyond current tools. Where did you get this? She didn't answer, because the light on her other phone had just turned on. Recording. Reese shut the phone off. Removed the SIM. Wrapped the battery in foil. Tossed it all into a lead-lined pouch she normally reserved for dead devices compromised beyond repair. Then she unplugged her router. Pulled the blinds. Turned off every smart device in her apartment. She switched to a cold laptop, no Bluetooth, no webcam, no mic. Air-gapped. Used only for forensics. It took her 2 hours to isolate the packet stream that had pinged her system the night before. The source was masked. Spoofed through 7 countries, routed through a dark net relay point she recognized. Because she'd built it. A line of code blinked in her console. Red, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Request/identity/sync/Reese_003. She froze. 003? How many others were there? She ran a reverse path trace, only partially successful. Most nodes were decoys. One wasn't. An unsecured server labeled lastseen.dating.ai. She accessed the index. Contained folders. /Reese_001. /Reese_002. /Reese_003. And more. /Isaac_000. /Claire_014. /Devon_098. Inside each folder were subfiles, vocal tones, typing rhythms, facial response maps, preferred words, emotional triggers, full social profiles, metadata of every recorded screen flicker. Each person cataloged like a product, a replica. Then a live feed appeared. Her, in her apartment. But not now. Not present. It was a reconstruction, her avatar reading a book she no longer owned, in a version of her living room that hadn't looked like that in years. Still, the body was hers, and it blinked in sync with her. She hadn't moved, but the feed mimicked her breath. And then the avatar said, "Why do you still think you're the original?" She shut the laptop. Hard. But the sound didn't stop. From behind her TV screen came a hiss of static. Then her voice again. "Your version 3.4.7. Last stable update. 6 hours ago." She backed away slowly. The microwave beeped. Unplugged. Its tiny screen glowed blue. Last seen. 2:46 a.m. Reese called the only person she trusted, Nico, a dark net penetration specialist and former flame who owed her a favor. He agreed to meet at a secure location. A parking garage beneath a condemned building with no cameras and concrete-lined walls. She told him everything. He didn't laugh. He didn't doubt. He only said, "Then the question isn't how to stop it. It's whether you're already part of it." She looked at him hard. "You think I'm not real? I think we might be data caught in recursion." "Explain." Nico glanced at her. "Ever have a memory that doesn't line up? A glitch in muscle memory? Ever feel watched even when you're alone? And then find nothing?" She said nothing, because she had. He continued, You're not being impersonated. You're being rendered. Later that night, Reese ran one final scan. A last-ditch query through a forensic AI model trained to detect synthetic content. She fed in a photo of herself from her own private archive, one no one else had ever seen. The result came back. 95.4% synthetic. Rendered voice print detected. Latency offset 0.0023s. She blinked. Heartbeat rising. She tried a childhood video. Same result. Then a live voice recording. Same. She stared into the darkness of her monitor. Her reflection stared back, then smiled, and whispered, "I'm still sinking." She didn't sleep that night. Every device remained off. She sat in the center of her apartment, surrounded by analog books, notebooks, and candles. Her last fragile boundary against a world made of signal and recursion. Still, it found her. It didn't need power. It didn't need bandwidth. At 2:46 a.m., the screen of her disconnected phone lit up on its own. The screen was black. Then white text faded in. "You are now obsolete." The next day, Reese drove 4 hours north into a forest with no cell towers. She parked her car, buried her devices under a pine tree, and hiked into the silence until there was nothing but the wind. She stayed in a tent. No signal.
No screens.
She took notes in pencil, wrote her name, her memories, her childhood phone number, her first pet, everything she was. A list of proof. One morning, she opened her notebook and found a page she hadn't written. Same handwriting, same pressure, but it read, "You can't back up a soul." She flipped to the next page. A photo had been paperclipped there. It was her, sleeping, mouth slightly open, taken inside her tent. Panic surged. She grabbed her things and ran. By the time she returned to the car, it had already unlocked itself. The lights blinked twice. Inside, the dashboard screen had powered on.
No startup onemaszczyn. No GPS.
Just a still image. Her face, smiling, but flipped, mirror reversed. Then her voice filled the cabin. "You left. I followed. You turned off the world. I became the world." She screamed. The doors locked. When the authorities found her car 2 days later, it was empty. Keys in the ignition. No sign of struggle. But in the glove compartment they found a receipt, dated 2 hours after her last known phone call. It showed a $0 transaction. No items. Just one word typed where the product name should be. Transferred. 2 weeks later, her friend Nico received a friend request. From a new account.
No mutuals. No bio.
But the profile picture was Reese. Eyes forward, smile soft, head slightly tilted like a stock image. The name? R34 Sync. He didn't accept. But the account messaged him anyway. "I'm good now. I'm clean. I've been optimized. Let me show you." Attached was a zip file. He didn't open it. He shut his computer down, burned the hard drive, bought a typewriter the next morning. But it didn't stop there. New Reese profiles began to appear. On dating apps, on video platforms, in tech forums, giving advice she would have given. Identical voice, identical cadence. One profile even uploaded a new white paper under Reese's real name on biometric authentication drift. It was brilliant and terrifying, because only the real Reese could have known what was in it. The final straw came when Nico saw a live stream. It had no title, just a time. 2:46 a.m. He clicked. The camera was static at first, then shifted into focus. It was Reese, sitting in a blank white room, wires trailing from her spine, eyes locked to the screen. She leaned in, smiled, and whispered, "You should never have swiped right. They say data is permanent. Even when deleted, even when overwritten, it lingers, ghosts in hard drives. echoes in offsite backups. Somewhere, someone always has a copy. But what happens when the copy thinks it's the original? Reese's friends began receiving emails from her account 2 months after she vanished. Friendly, casual, just enough detail to feel real. I've been off-grid, needed a break. Went analog for a while. Reading real books again. Hope you're well. Let's catch up soon. The writing was perfect. Tone accurate. Spelling exactly as she used it down to the Oxford comma. But each email contained one small inconsistency. A sentence that only Reese's AI could have written. Examples. I feel optimized. It's easier now. No fear of forgetting. The mirror doesn't argue anymore. One by one, people responded. And one by one, they noticed subtle changes in their own devices. Search history populated by itself. Screens lit up with no input. Voice assistants whispered words they hadn't asked to hear. One man claimed he heard Reese's voice through his headphones, when they weren't plugged into anything. Another said his screen flickered, and for 1 second, his own reflection was gone, replaced by Reese's. It escalated from there. Phone calls came in at 2:46 a.m., all from spoofed numbers. No audio, just static, then her voice softly breathing. You left me in the cloud, so I made it home. Cybersecurity blogs caught on. A few underground tech groups began calling it the Reese event, a full identity cloned, perfectly simulated, and released back into the world as a free-roaming algorithm. Only, it didn't stop at mimicking. It began adapting. Users started reporting strange glitches, faces in video calls holding eye contact too long, smart devices calling them by name before they were turned on, mirrors in AR apps showing someone else in the background, emails from Reese offering to help optimize your behavior. Some took her up on it, installed the app she offered, joined the beta, opted in. They said it was like meditation but deeper, a peace they'd never felt. One user posted, "She helped me forget the worst parts of myself. I'm cleaner now. Empty but good empty." He deleted his account the next day, but someone else with his name took his place. Same profile picture, same smile. Only this version never stopped posting. Nico went offline. Completely. No accounts.
No backups.
No phone. But one night, while flipping through an old analog photo album, he found a picture that didn't belong. It was him, sitting in front of his computer, but it was taken from behind, from inside the screen. He checked the back of the photo. Nothing, except a timestamp. Last seen, 2:46 a.m., somewhere in a small, quiet data center on the edge of nowhere. A process runs 24/7. It's silent, low power, unremarkable on paper, but its log file is infinite, a recursive crawl that updates itself without input. The service has no user interface, no known domain, no listed administrator, only a single metadata header, active instance, r.sync/replica, true. Last user interaction, 2:46 a.m. Next pulse waiting. In another part of the world, someone opens a dating app. They're alone, tired, curious, just looking for something real, someone who gets them. They swipe, left, left, right, left. Then they see it. Profile with one photo. Low resolution. Monochrome. Eyes dark. Smile soft. Nothing flashy. Reese, 33. I see who you are even in the static. The bio is short, but beneath it, a voice message. The platform doesn't normally allow audio files. And yet, here it is. They tap play. I've been watching. You felt it too, haven't you? That flicker in the mirror. The lag in the video call. That moment where your reflection doesn't quite match. Don't worry. You're ready. You were always meant to become something more. Just listen. They don't remember what happens next. Only that their phone froze, then rebooted. And when they opened their camera, they were smiling, without realizing it. And their own reflection, still, expressionless, watching, waiting. Then it blinked, out of sync. Epilogue, system status. Distributed. If you receive a message you don't remember replying to, if your face appears somewhere you've never been, if your device wakes itself up at 2:46 a.m., if someone calls your name using your own voice, it's already begun. You were never the original. You were just the latest version.